Thank you all for gathering here today. You may have heard our clients want to go digital over our beloved film. I'm not changing. I'm not changing! The show goes on! This is my format! We're gonna need a miracle to make me change! I ain't changing!
Dehancer is a film emulation plugin suite which is available for Adobe Premiere Pro, Final Cut Pro, and DaVinci Resolve. It is very similar to other film emulation software that is available, but I can say honestly that this one is built different. I'm not trying to sound cool and use YouTube lingo, it's literally built different. There are a whole bunch of film stocks available, and the amount of research and work that has gone into creating them is actually mind-blowing. I'm going to spend the next little while talking about the film look, what we love about the film look, what this software is all about, and whether it's worth its price tag, more than every other film emulation software on the market.
My name's Ben Marlow, filmmaker and director, and I suppose now, thanks to this video review, film photographer. If you've seen the Beginner's Guide to Vintage Lenses video on our channel, then you'll know we love a vintage lens here at Ben&Jack Studio. I suppose then you would think that we felt the same way about film. Well, kind of. Not really. Honestly, I'm still trying to work it out. When Dehancer contacted us about reviewing their software, I thought this could be fun. I still use other film emulation software and I love the look it gives me. So I thought, let's have a look at it, get to know the software and see what it does that others don't and how film-like it could be. Then I realized I knew jack shit about film. I definitely didn't want to just go and use it for a week and do a screen grab video of how to use the software, blah, blah, blah. I wanted to get to know it fully and really understand it before blindly telling people to go and buy the software with our 10% discount, which of course you definitely can do, by the way. The discount code is BJStudio10. The reason it has taken so long is because I myself went on a journey. I needed to know what it is that people like about the film look. Why on earth people would want to take their incredibly sharp lenses, magnificent 4K sensors, and basically screw up the footage and make it look not how the manufacturer intended it to be. I even bought a Pentax 645 medium format camera to really get into the inner understandings of what it is like to be a film photographer. 25 rolls later, significant batterings to my bank account. Now I have a full section dedicated to film photography on my website. You can even buy my prints if you have more money than sense and would like a random photo of a telegraph pole on your wall. Before we display my midlife crisis for all to see, I needed to go back a step and truly understand what the film look even is. If you don't care about any of that old tosh and you want to skip right to the bit where we actually talk about the software, then you can do so by finding it in the chapters below. So what is the film look?
The grain.
Wise words from Pete Bromfield there. Thanks, Pete. We'll hear more from Pete later on. But he was right to start off with film grain, or it's unsurprising that he started off with film grain. Film grain is the golden child of the film look. I think if you asked 1 million people what the film look was, 99% of them would probably kick off with film grain. Undeniably, film grain is a massive part of what gives us the film look. But there are other things that make up the film look. For example, bloom. Bloom typically refers to the bright and diffused glow that blooms out of the highlights of an image. It occurs when intense light blooms over or spills over to adjacent pixels, causing a hazy glow around the edges. Of course, we have pro mist filters, which were designed for the very people who love that warm, glowing loveliness that bloom is. My next go-to would be halation, which is kind of similar to bloom, but it's similar in that it's affected on the highlight areas of an image. The technical side of it, which I geek out on, is that when light comes through the lens and onto the film, it then bounces off the back of the camera and then comes back onto the back of the film, exposing it again, which is why it's more prominent in film photography, although it can happen digitally as well, giving a red circle most oftenly on highlight areas like light bulbs or any bright area in an image. Light leaks. Light leaks have probably been overused so much that people don't even use them that much anymore. Light leaks are where unexpected light has come through and hit the film or the sensor and created overexposed parts of the image or streaks of light that just weren't intended to be there. And probably the most ironically overlooked one of them all is the film stock, i.e. which brand of negative is being used. Something I've never needed any convincing over is the warm tones that we get from shooting on film. Of course, some can be cooler, some can be greener, some might deal with reds differently, some are black and white, you can get infrared film, so there's all of these different types of film stock that can be used that yield completely different results to what we just get off our one sensor on a Sony camera, for example, unless we start trying out different picture profiles, etc. But then always the coloring and the different textures or whatever are being put onto that digital file after the fact. And of course,
why fake it when you can have the real thing?
The real thing indeed.
There is a lot more to the film look other than the aforementioned grain, bloom, halation, film burns, and different film stocks. But beyond these fundamentals, my knowledge admittedly becomes a little hazy. It's also important to know that the film look starts way before the point where we just slap a LUT onto our footage and call it cinematic. There are a whole host of things that happen before the color grade that lend themselves to the holy grail that is the film look we all so desire. Story, actors, costume, location, color palettes, production design, set design, audio, sound design, camera choice, lens choice, and of course, film stock. Or if you're shooting digital, the film emulation software you use, all play a part in it. Why are we so obsessed with it? If you type the film look into Google, you will get 4,430,000,000 results. I've been through them all. No, I haven't really. Film photography is everywhere at the moment.
And even if you don't realize it, you have probably seen some film photography recently. Wedding photographers are making it their USP, and hobbyists and professionals are shooting more film than perhaps I had even realized. I have seen a lot more huge luxury brands opting for that on-camera flash photography look in their campaigns in an increasing amount. I suppose they are just transporting us back with nostalgia to a time when we had £3,000 to spend on a handbag. I studied photography and film at the turn of the millennium. I learned how to shoot 35mm film in an old Pentax SLR. The processing obviously was as much a pain in the arse as it is now, but just by looking back at those photos from around that time brings about an incredible nostalgic feeling, something that only those cameras with those 35mm or 120 rolls of negative film really could. But I still wasn't convinced. After all of the advancements in technology and the ease at which we can create really amazing images today, why would anyone ever want to go back to how it was over 120 years ago? But maybe that's exactly what's good about it. The fact that it's so old. And everything nowadays is so new and so instant. I was struggling to get my head around it, torn because on one hand I see the advancements in technology and the strides which we have taken forward in terms of lens builds, giving us the ability to create images we never could in the 80s, but we still want to make everything look less clean and less sharp, less sterile. We buy vintage lenses, we put pro mists on them lenses, we add filmic LUTs to our footage. I even saw someone online who had taken a screwdriver to their old vintage lens to make it look even more old and battered. We are doing everything we can to go against these advancements in technology. I then started to realize that there are two different reasons, at least for me, to create images. Sometimes we need to show the most lifelike rendition of an object. If we are selling something, like a product, or trying to show something in the most realistic way we can, then 4 billion megapixel sensors with a lens as sharp as my blade-like humor is definitely the way to go. But what I was and I'm still learning is that film is much more about capturing a feeling. When I saw other photographers' images, it made me feel something, rather than be completely amazed at the lifelike reproduction of it. It was an imperfect, warm, and hazy rendition of a moment in time or a place. These photographers were capturing feelings, and I wanted in on it. I was looking at a lot of photographers at this point who are making wonderful content and are fantastic photographers with lovely imagery. I was transfixed by the photos. As I started to engage with it, I noticed a pattern. All the photos I liked the most were shot on medium format 120 cameras. To be completely honest, I could take or leave the 35mm stuff. It was nostalgic and grainy and lovely, but it didn't have the detail. The medium format shots were filmy and beautiful, but they still had detail. Something I still have a craving for, having gotten used to 16-bit raw red files. Back to YouTube, look at some more cameras. I decided the Pentax 645 was the one. An order of film from Analog Wonderland, and there I was, ready to go. Medium format camera, roll of Kodak Portra 400. But what do I do now? It's back to YouTube, where somebody who knows way more than me will guide me through step by step. Tell me exactly what I need to do to get out there and shoot my first roll of film in over 25 years. I loved it. I loved that you had no clue what was happening when you hit the shutter. I knew every shot was going to cost about £4, so I took forever to make sure I had the right composition. I checked my focus about 15 times. I loved the chunky crack of the shutter and physical form of the camera. I shot the roll in about 20 minutes, and it was amazing. There I was, out taking photographs of pointless shit like the other film photographers on YouTube do. I wanted to know if the photos had come out, but of course I wouldn't know until they came back from the lab. When they came back, they were absolute dog shit. Not helped by the fact that I sent them to a Snappy Snaps instead of a proper lab. I liked the anticipation, but I wanted this roll done fast because I wanted to know if I had pictures or not.
They also thought the 6 megabyte files were editable, which is interesting. The weather was bad, the photographer was bad, the lab was bad, and the scans were bad. But as long as the camera is good, then I can still get better. So I stayed with it. The next roll had 2 good shots in, and the one after that had 3 good shots in, and I was getting better and better photos whilst really honing in on the skill. I was hooked. Having a first look at those 100 megabyte TIFFs from Jack's lab were amazing. All that detail and real film grain. It was beautiful. And now I don't see myself ever not taking photographs on film. This, of course, was my own personal experience. I wanted to see what other people loved about it. I know I can't do justice to this question in a 20-minute YouTube video, but I reckon I can scratch the surface, and I've certainly worked out why I am now obsessed with film. Film photographer and the other half of Mixed Emulsions, Pete Bromfield, is a great friend of mine, and I've always enjoyed seeing his film photography pop up on Instagram. So I thought he would be a great person to chat to about why we love it so much.
I honestly was thinking just a straight up shot, but like, we'd have to be in the road for it.
Yeah, okay.
Well, actually 28 covers it quite nicely. But I'm really struggling to pull focus on this.
I suppose the whole point of this is being competent with the kit. And I don't know, are we competent with the kit, Pete?
I think I like to think so, but this is the joy of film photography and film photography equipment. It's a challenge, right? And that's what I love about it. I like, if I had an A7 IV or a digital-based photography camera right now, I would have taken the photo, walked off, looked at it, never looked at it again and walked off. But now, I'm stood here, I'm like struggling to pull focus. I'm trying to work out the metering to make sure I get the best possible exposure for the shot, and I love that. It's challenging, right? And you know, you need challenges to keep you interested in things.
And the reason I do it is because if I screw it up, I can just blame film.
Like, I don't want to go deep for deep's sake, but like, there's something about like the film look that is just, it feels a lot more authentic than a digital look. How it handles the highlights compared to digitally. The look of it is authenticity. It has a charm about it. The way it handles colours is just, you know, depending on the film stock you use. I love Portrait 800, and I think the way that handles colours is beautiful, similar to Portrait 400. But also the grain and sharpness you get from it, from a film perspective, is lovely.
Because obviously it's grain, it's halation, bloom, all of that sort of stuff. But what's beautiful to me is all of those things combined, and not necessarily how each of those things look themselves, you know, like the reddy oranginess of the halation and the white kind of bloom and the way that all get, but it's that kind of cumulative effect of the whole thing that makes the feeling, right?
For me, it's not just about how it looks, because it's deeper than that. For me, it's like, is this photo going to come out? Digital photography could kind of be like compared to like classical music, where everything is perfect, everything is like spot on, crisp, tonally perfect, you know, the best it can be. But film photography feels more like punk rock. Imperfect, because imperfection is punk rock. You know, it doesn't you don't have to be the best guitarist to make a good song like the Sex Pistols. But it's the feeling that you're going for, and that's very much like film photography. Like when you get to the end of your roll or an early shot in the roll, and you shoot it, and you get that like, you get that effect with the shutter where it's like half blown out, half in. I love those accidents that happen because they can yield like a really artistic look. So yeah, I think the imperfection of film is also just like punk rock, man.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes I'll leave a roll in the camera for like a couple of months. I'm not going out and banging them, smashing through them in a day. And I'll forget what I've taken, and then you get it developed and it comes back, and I've almost forgotten half the shots that are on there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like first and foremost that came out, like it's a well-produced photograph. Secondly, I completely forgot I took that. So I think that's more to do with like the anticipation and like the process of shooting film. So I found myself now, I'm shooting stuff at f10, f11, which would have been like, what am I doing back in the day? But I'm doing it now, but it's forcing me to find better compositions, to make the photo better. So I think that's definitely something that I love about film. It's the appreciation for the composition rather than like a setting in the camera.
I got so snobbish about 1.4 or 1.2. There was like if
sharpness.
Yeah. And if it's not been taken with an SLR or DSLR, then it's not worth anything. Shooting film photography has taken me to F8 and beyond. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, and I looked at this photo and I'm like, I don't give a that there's no bokeh. I don't give a shit that there's nothing in separating foreground and background. What I'm seeing here is a photo for what it is. Whereas just before, I'd be like, okay, so where's the bokeh? Basically, do you know what I mean? And it's because a lot of filmmakers, I doubt they really shoot at 1.2. There was that film, that zombie film that was shot with the Canon Dream lens, which is like 0.9 or whatever it is, and the focus puller is probably dead now because it was just the most horrific job for him. And just shoot this thing shallow as possible, and it's really made me, as you say, just look at what is good in this image without me having to make the bokeh look amazing. How do I put this into this bit of film? And it makes you start thinking like a photographer, right? And from a digital filmmaker, that sometimes can get lost.
I'm always striving for something that looks different than reality. Mm-hmm. So like for me, if I look with my eyes and I see that environment, it's quite boring. So, or if I look at someone, there's no like bokeh, there's no depth of field. But when you shoot with a shallow lens and you get that bokeh, it looks different. So it's like, wow, that's like we've created something that's different from reality. And I think film is the same. Yeah. We're still doing the same thing, because a lot of film looks different to reality because of the unique treatment of how a film photograph looks. It's not like real life. So I feel like the essence of what what we like doing is the same. It's just by using film photography at the minute, whether it's like it was before, shooting on a shallow lens. See what I'm saying? Yeah,
absolutely. I really got bit by the film photography bug. I shot loads of film and I could afford the scans, but I didn't want to be spending, in 1 month I came back with like 8 rolls of film from the trip from Bulgaria. Shot loads of film, and then it was like, well, this is going to cost me whatever it would be, over 200 quid to get all of this scanned. So then it was like, right, how can I do this myself? So then I found this really cool video actually, which I'll link to because it's really helpful if you want to get into digital scanning. It was funny, like Kate had literally, as this was happening, Kate broke one of our chopping boards in half with an axe that for some reason she used the chopping board to chop this firewood on. And I was like, okay, so now I've got a piece of wood. I built this thing. So basically, get the film, shoot the film. Now I've built this thing where I can, I don't build stuff anyway. So the very fact that I'm building this digital scanning bit of kit was something amazing. So then I'm scanning the film. So I've got to, I've got all the kit, scanning the negatives, getting the negatives on board. Photography was always about, it wasn't computer screens, right? So what happened to photographs from negatives? They're made into prints. Yeah. And we were going, and I've been in the labs with all the, dodging and burning, doing all of that sort of stuff. But at the end, we always had these prints at the end of it. Now, like what happens with all the photos on your phone? Do you ever look at them, really? Yeah, so it's like you've got this whole process, and like you say, it could be 3 months, or if you're getting prints, it could be even longer before you've then actually got something to show for it at the end. But point I'm making is that the fact that I've gone through all of this effort to take this photo, I'm much more likely to then have a print of it, because when you print the thing out and you put it up on your wall, that's something that you've done from start to finish, right? Do you know what I mean? You've seen it out. You've done every part of that journey has been you doing your thing. And whether the print looks like shit on the wall or not, it makes no difference, because it's the feeling that you got whilst taking and producing that than what you actually get. Because
the craft. There has been craft involved in producing that print, and that's enjoyable, rather than taking a photo and never looking at it ever again on the cloud, which we do.
I would genuinely like to thank Dehancer for reintroducing me to film photography. and for burning a hole through my pocket. I don't know if I ever would have started this journey without doing this review, so thank you, Dehancer. So now I get it. I understand the film look, but from a film photographer's perspective. It's by no means a cheap hobby to take film photographs, but when we move all of that over to the moving image, we get catapulted into another stratosphere. The easiest way for anyone who isn't a very well-known director shooting a feature film to be able to get your hands on film for cinema is probably Super 8. The Kodak have released a new version of the old Super 8 camera. It looks really cool and the footage definitely hits the right spots if nostalgia is what you're going for. But it's far from cheap. And bearing in mind the processing costs for that many frames, there is very limited ways to experiment with film for cinema. Which is why film emulation software is the only real conceivable way for us as filmmakers to achieve that look. And of course, it's more convenient. And that, I suppose, is the exact reason that I would use film emulation software in the first place. As I said in the intro, I haven't seen one better than this. But how is it better? Quite frankly, it's more comprehensive. It isn't just an add effect, choose film stock and slide the grain slider kind of situation, like most of the other ones are. There are 13 different sets of controls once Dehancer has been dropped onto your clip. All of these controls can be enabled or disabled too, giving you complete control over your image. If you've done a grade you already like by another method and just want to add grain or halation or bloom, for example, you can absolutely do that. It does take a little while to get used to all of the controls that you have at your disposal, but when you have got your head around it, you can create some really, really lovely images. It's also available for Lightroom, so you can make your digital photos look like film. Particularly handy if, like me, you have a load of digital photos that you don't want to stand out in a collection. The results are incredible, which, having used this software for 6 months now, I would have expected. We try to grade as much as we can in DaVinci Resolve, and having the Dehancer plugin as part of my color grading process there is super handy. Of course, you can create your own film look in DaVinci, but it's a very lengthy process. Dehancer has made the whole process a hell of a lot more achievable, quicker, and better. I'm not suggesting that you go out and buy all the film cameras on offer and start photographing on film, but I would definitely check out Dehancer if you're already in the market for film emulation software. And if you're ready to take the leap and start creating some old, timeless, nostalgic looking footage, don't forget to use our discount code below. And if you're really, really bored, head along to benmarlow.com, where you can have a look at some of my photography. If you've decided that you do want that telegraph pole print after all profits from all sales on the Ben Marlow website go to charity. Thank you for watching.
I'm not changing! I'll smash my tooth!
That was so good. Wait, it's okay.
I've chipped it!
It's a bit of feedback.
I thought you put your hand.
What am I doing? I literally itched my lip. What that lip?
You're gonna need a 4 f***ing Brazilian gajillion f***ing megapixel sensor to make me change!